And now we have the emotional authority with the undefined spleen for a manifestor. So manifestors are designed, again, to initiate and move quickly. When you have an emotional authority, that is going to make that very difficult. You have the manifestor who's now want to get it done, and then you have this emotional authority that's, I need you to wait because there is no truth in the now. So this is a very challenging configuration. Then you add the spleen, which is undefined. When the spleen is undefined, the challenge becomes even more layered. So not only does the manifestor wait through their emotional wave, they must also learn to recognize when the impulse to move, because remember that spleen is impulsive, it's about in the now, isn't even coming from them in the first place. It's not consistent. So it's actually because it's not consistent, they're not used to those splenic hits. It could be talking to you through all of these different ways that are not consistent to you, that you haven't experienced before. So it can make it even more confusing. So let's go over the foundationals. Emotional authority is every decision is filtered through a constantly shifting emotional chemistry, a wave which is going to be unique to you as a person. We will go through that center and go through each of the waves when we go through that center in phase 2. But just know that there are different types of waves that are consistent for you. And that at the height of a wave, you could get a yes, and a low, you could also get a yes, but they're going to be experienced by you very differently. It's going to be a different emotion. So it kind of conditions it. You could think that something could be a yes, but you're in a low, so you'll experience it as fear, and then you don't do the thing. Very confusing. So again, the goal with the emotions is emotional clarity, and let's talk about how we're going to find that clarity. Clarity is not certainty. So the goal is never 100% mental certainty. It's impossible. You actually just have to decide that you're certain. Clarity is pre-rational. So it's like you're clear, but there's no rationale behind it. You couldn't explain to somebody why the thing is clearly something you should or shouldn't do. Clarity also comes when the nervousness drops, because remember, the emotional center is all about nerves in your nervous system. When there's a genuine neutrality around the decision, that is when you're going to get the most clarity around the decision. So you want to sleep on it, let your wave process, and then make the decision from that neutral point. So the solar plexus is directly connected to food, sex, and breath. So when the emotional system is honored, those things are moving. The wave is ridden rather than acted on impulsively. Those systems are regulated and they are moving along as they should. If you're having trouble with your breath, if it's chaotic, if you're having trouble with your digestion, if you're hypersexual, that is more indicator of that you are in a high or a low and you're not necessarily emotionally regulated or in neutral. So because the spleen is undefined in this configuration, this manifestor does not have a consistent, reliable internal alarm system for safety, health, and timing. And so there's no steady stream of body-based intuitive hits to collect and cross-reference. Basically, like you haven't had it so much throughout your life that you understand it. So the fixed awareness essentially isn't there. And so what happens instead is when the manifestor is in the presence of someone with a defined spleen, their undefined spleen temporarily takes in and amplifies that energy from that person. And it feels like this sudden aliveness, a buzz, a spark. It's a feel-good energy, a sense of feeling better than good. And it can feel like clarity. It can feel like a yes. It can feel like a green light, but it's not your truth. This is the core mechanical danger of this configuration, is that you're mistaking conditioned splenic energy for your own authority. The buzz is not a real experience. It's borrowed, it's temporary, and it will not be there when that person leaves the room. So I also want to talk about the undefined spleen's kind of relationship with fear. So a defined spleen produces primal, specific, present moment fear, a survival signal that exists to keep the person safe in the now. An undefined spleen is going to amplify the fear of others, essentially. And so you, manifestor, walks into a room and absorbs the existential fears and health anxieties and the survival concerns of everyone around them that has a defined spleen. And so the mind then tries to use these borrowed fears as a basis for decision making and creating this mental anxiety, this paranoia, and just this pervasive sense of something is wrong. But the key insight is that most of what the manifestor is experiencing as fear and anxiety is not theirs. If you were completely in alignment, you wouldn't experience fear, right? You would experience it here and there, but you would know it's not yours. You don't have a consistent relationship to fear and intuition in that way. So this is where your natural wiring kind of creates a lot of risk. So you feel this initial urge to initiate. The undefined spleen creates a pull toward a spontaneity, a now energy that says move, decide, commit. We got to do this right now or it's going to go away. When those two forces combine, the pressure to act immediately can feel very overwhelming and even correct. That is your not self, right? A person with a defined spleen is genuinely spontaneous by design. Their hits are real and reliable, and even if they still need to wait for emotional clarity before acting on them, it's still true for them. A manifestor with an undefined spleen feels the urge to be spontaneous, is almost always responding to somebody's need to feel secure, healthy, or certain. That a manifestor with an undefined spleen who feels the urge to be spontaneous is almost always responding from not self. It's that need to feel secure, the health to feel healthy or certain, that is being borrowed from somebody else's energy field. The rule of thumb is if it feels urgent right now, that is actually your signal to wait. So here's what the decision flow would be. So you will notice the impulse, right? Because you're seeing something, so you're choosing, you have a moment of choice, right? To create something or not. So you'll feel this urge to initiate it. You'll feel this buzz of excitement, a sense of urgency. Got to do this, got to do this, got to do this. And it might be through, it's not going to have this pervasive narrative around it. It's a hit, right? Ask the question, am I in the presence of someone, or was I just in the presence of somebody with a defined spleen? Could this be borrowed? Then you need to ride your emotional wave. So observe how you feel about the decision at a high, at a low, and even at the neutral point. Watch what remains. Watch what is still there. If the pull to move is still present once the wave has settled and you're no longer in that person's aura, remember it needs to be, I think it's 5 feet away. I would have to double check that. If you're not in that person's aura and it's still a yes, that carries a lot more weight. I'd still would wait for the neutral point. Then if it's a yes, inform and then initiate. So the bottom line for this is that it's asking you to do two things that are against your nature, which is slow down before initiating and question whether the impulse to move is yours, because you move through so much of it, because you're so open, you're experiencing all people's health anxieties and all of those things. But the wisdom only comes through the discipline, right, of honoring that wave, or you internally don't believe you can trust it. So when you start to get this right, and then the initiations land much more cleanly, everything goes more smoothly, but most of all, you trust it, right? There's this level of certainty because you know you've gone through the process versus when you just make these spontaneous decisions, you look back and you're like, how could I have done that to myself? And then you lose this trust with yourself. And that always will hinder you in creating the life that it is that you want. So that is your decision-making process and authority.